Hey everybody, how's it going? Dan Schinder here on Yesshift with
Steven Schinder.
and our guest. Wow, third time offender?
Second.
Second?
Yeah,
It feels like three. Just kidding, Dave. Dave Kerzner joining us from his studio where you have created a new album that we're going to talk about. So actually, whoops, he just disconnected. I think he
Oh,
was
did he?
going to adjust something and it went.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he'll be back in a moment, folks. I'm sure. Everybody hide.
Right. Yeah, so we're talking about his new album, Hard to Landmines Volume 1, which people can get at sonicelements.bandcamp.com. And it's in a few different formats, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, I'll show the album art while we're waiting for Dave to come back on. It's actually,
Right.
I think it's a really nice cover. There we go. Dave's back.
Got a phone call. Got a phone call.
Oh,
And I was
okay.
trying to like delete the call, and I answered the call, and I think it was spam anyway.
Okay, yeah.
Steve was just introducing your new album, and I'm showing the album art right now as well for everybody.
Oh, cool.
Which
Yeah,
is great. Tell us about the cover.
Right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have it. I love
It's
seeing
beautiful.
the physical version.
Same
What do you want
here.
to know about the cover?
Yeah, who designed it and where is that? Is that anywhere real? Whatever you want to reveal about it.
Sure.
The cubes, I find it really compelling. This is a neat album cover.
I designed it.
Great.
I like
Nice.
to do, visual art. We shot it I shot it with Eric Nielsen. We did a lot of driving for the visuals for the albums. There's actually a full length music video for the whole album coming out on streaming and Blu-ray. And while we did that, we did some photo shoots, the back shot. This is the first time I'm actually pictured on the album.
Wow.
On one of my solo albums. I never do it, but it's more of a personal album.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought this would be the time to, put me in it.
Yeah.
And sort of, it's got an autobiographical story, concept album. Anyway, so yeah, we shot this on the drive.
Is that out in Mojave?
Yeah, I mean, we drove all over the place. The original idea, so the album is a concept album about, sorry, I'm getting over cold, so if I'm a little stuffed up.
No worries.
No worries.
About driving cross country, leaving Los Angeles, which I did in the 90s temporarily after a breakup. And I was living with her, so I had no place to live. So I started driving and writing songs. And I never finished those songs, all of them, some of them, but most of the concept, the whole thing was sort of on the back burner for decades until now. So anyway, long story short, the drive that I did with Eric wasn't the full cross country. We did a little more of a scenic route because we wanted to capture some really cool stuff. So yes, we went to the Mojave and all sorts of different places.
That's great. And tell us about the genesis of the band. Not the band Genesis, the genesis of your band. We know the other one. And I just want to read off the personality. You got some great players, of course, and there's two in particular that are coincidental, and I'll get into that later when I comment on a couple songs. But we've got, of course, Dave, and proof this time is of him on the album cover. You got Fernando Perdomo, just an amazing bass player. Echo in the Canyon, Matt Dorsey from Sound of Contact, Durga McBroom, our friend from Pink Floyd, Elliot Randall from Steely Dan, Lyle Workman, Jellyfish and Beck, and Joe Denizon of Kansas, and more. Just a great lineup. How did all that come together? Did you just call up a bunch of friends, or was it designed around the soundscape you were designing and everybody's skills and whatnot? How did it all come about?
Well, they are all friends.
Yeah.
And but it happened over different periods of time. So like, for instance, Lyle Workman, Toss Panos, Mark McCrite, those sessions were in the 90s on ADAT tapes, which were like these VHS tapes.
Yeah.
And I still have
Alesis ADAT tapes, right?
Yeah. I still have the tapes. I don't even have the machine, but I borrowed a machine and I duped them over to Pro Tools. And I kept the original tracks from those guys. Of course, Lyle is amazing. He's just, and he played with Kevin Gilbert, who I also played with.
Yeah.
And So those tracks came from decades ago. And then the other people you mentioned, like Durga McBroom, Fernando Perdomo, plays guitar and bass, Matt Dorsey, my bandmate, Sound of Contact, Joe Danazon. I have been working with those guys, and those gals. So it's kind of like a family, a tree of people that I work with a lot. And
Yeah.
I'd say that, and then of course there's Elliot Randall from Steely Dan, who I've been friends with for a long time and always wanted to work with. But like you said, it was more about casting someone. That's sort of a Steely Danish track, so we're paying homage in that track back to one. So I thought, let's get Elliot to play on this.
Yeah.
But they, they're cast because I know the more I work with them, the more I kind of have a sense of what they do. And so I could say, okay, you know what, I need like a really passionate solo. Okay, let's ask Fernando. Or I need a really like clever bass. Okay, let's call Matt Dorsey. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then other times I'll just be like, they're just so multi instrumentalist talented that I could just go to Matt or go to Randy McStein or go to Fernando and just say, just try something on this, which I rarely do, but sometimes I do that. And I did that with Matt on this record for Pushed Me Out, which is the most yes-ish song on the record.
Yes. Interesting. That's great.
Yeah, the music and lyrics really make one feel like they are there. Like in Worlds Apart, for example, you really capture that universal feeling of sort of feeling isolated while also going from one place to another, especially in the music video, having that feeling in the car, whether it be as a driver or a passenger.
Yeah, I mean, so thanks. And that song in particular, I was just talking about this to somebody, um, is a pivotal moment on the album because the idea is, or the actual true story is, I was living with this girl, Genevieve, the character. There's a song about
Right.
her on the record. And, basically like a singer who I worked with who wanted to get married was pushing toward it. And then when she got interest from a record company, kind of backpedaled. And I had
Oh.
to I'm like, I got to get out of here. This is just too much for me. Everything, LA and the girl. So, in the industry, I was just like, I got to collect my thoughts here. So I was and we broke up, but she kind of pushed me out, literally. Sort of like, we're done with you. I'm going to try to go for this A&R guy or whatever her deal was. Anyway, so um, I was driving, and then, about 3 days, 2 days into the drive, I was like, maybe I was a little rash. Maybe I should call her and we could just talk about it, just see. Maybe there's a misunderstanding and I called and she had disconnected the phone.
Oh.
Actually happened. And I thought to myself, it was sort of poetic. I'm like, that's it. Like, there's no going back. There's not even a chance. It was a good thing because it wouldn't have been good to go back anyway. But
Mm.
there is that part of me, maybe part of all of us, that's sort of like, a relationship is wrong and you kind of are willing to go back, and I probably, if she had talked me into it, I probably would have come back, but she disconnected the phone. And I thought, I'm going to sample these notes, the do do do, turn it into an instrument, which is what I play on that song. I don't know if that's clear.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's
And
neat.
and have the voices. We're sorry,
Yeah.
Yeah.
this phone line has been disconnected. So and then have that be the backdrop for this sad, like you said, moment where you're alone, and but it's a good thing too, and it leads to good things. It's
Mm.
that duality and a very universal thing where it's like when you get out of a relationship, particularly if it's bad and you know it, then it's obviously like you're breaking the habit. You're used to it. It's a shock to the system to be alone. It's like, wait, the unknown kind of comes in and everything. But at the same time, you're free. You know what I mean? Like, you're free.
Mm.
I'm free.
There's a
So
liberation factor to it.
yeah.
Yeah. And so, Steve, I know you're going to ask something else, but I want to jump in and ask Dave a couple
Sure,
things
go ahead.
about that. Okay, number one, if you don't mind, for context, how old were you when it happened?
I mean, mid-20s.
And
This is
what?
right around the time I played with Kevin Gilbert. And
Okay.
in fact, so mid-90s, and I I was in three bands at the same time. I was in Kevin's band in Pasadena, Genevieve's band. Her name wasn't really Genevieve, but I'm going to be nice and not say her real name.
Okay.
Right.
And the Eels, the band the Eels. For 2 minutes, I was in that band, and they were in Northridge. So these are
Oh.
like all 45 minutes away from each other, more with traffic. And I missed a couple rehearsals because it was like storming and everything. And they kicked me out of the Eels. He was like, we're just going to do this as a three-piece. And then I saw the music video of them, and I'm like, oh, I was in this band. I could, I screwed that up. And, but part of it, I'll take the blame, but, part of it was, she wanted me all for herself in Santa Monica
Yeah.
and playing in her band, and I was like, well, it's kind of my new life. It's what I'm doing. And then driving all the way out to Pasadena to play with Kevin when he's going to play the keyboards on the albums anyway. I was sort of like, all right, maybe I'm not going to do that either, which was a huge mistake. And, and then finally, that the bottom fell out from the relationships, my fiance and the band, all that stuff. And I was like, all right, I need to rethink everything.
Yeah. Does this album, even though that was years ago, I know personally sometimes it's easy to decide to not let go of some things. Did doing this album help like give a final cathartic moment in a way, or a final sort of closure in your heart to the whole situation? Or is it
Well,
more just an artistic expression of something that happened?
I'd long since gotten over
Okay.
that
Mm.
relationship. That wasn't that profound, really. It was to me at the time because I was 25
Yeah.
and I thought, and was lured in to be like, I mean, like to the point where, like, when I first met her, which was at the Troubadour show that we played
Oh,
with Kevin Gilbert, the Live at the Troubadour show. And I had actually met her before, but I forgot. And then I was like, "You seem familiar," and that whole thing. Have we met before? But it was true. And then we started going out. I remember her saying, like, before we could like go to the next level, she was like, "I just need to know, are you open to marriage? Like, not now, but like, are you open to it?" And I'm like, I mean, I'm open to it. I'm not, you know. And so she really kept hinting, and I was like, wow. And then she kept
interesting.
saying things like, when it's the one, you just know, you got to trust And I was like, I didn't want to jinx it. So I was like going along with this fast track, you found the one. So that's it. And then she pulled the rug out from underneath, and I was like naive, and I thought, oh my God, like I totally fell for this. And now I feel like a fool and all those things. And, but, again, devastating at the time. In retrospect, just that's life. You get
Well,
burned
well, plus
sometimes.
30 years later, now all women are like that. Just
No, they
kidding.
are.
Just
Gosh.
kidding,
No,
everybody.
no, my current girlfriend's amazing. Actually, she's totally like grounded and
Just don't
we
step
get
on a rug.
along. Yeah.
I'm
So,
kidding.
but the thing. So here's what it did do. At the time, so when you work with someone like Kevin Gilbert, the bar is raised really high, especially for lyrics, but everything. He was really good at everything. So playing and producing and engineering. So it was like a good thing and a curse at the same time, in a sense that I kept trying to finish these songs and I knew they weren't good enough. They needed more work. And then it kind of probably became like you're too close to it kind of a thing,
Yeah.
or
Hmm.
you're just, and um I don't know what, and I kind of dabbled into messing with it on and off for years. And then finally Sound of Contact happened in 2010. And also between 2000 and 2010, I kind of went a little bit more into the music instrument side of the music industry.
Yeah.
So, with my company Sonic Reality and partnering with IK Multimedia, which makes software plugins, and kind of led the way for a lot of those things.
Hmm.
And of course, you have to earn a living to supplement your music. career these days anyway, so it was
Right.
probably a really smart move. But with Sound of Contact and with Simon Collins, Phil Collins' son, I got back into really sinking my teeth into all aspects of writing and playing and performing and producing and all that stuff, and it was a success. So, I mean, at least our first one and only album, Dimensionaut, and from there, I wanted that to continue, but we had our own problems. So I was like, well, I'm just going to have to be the front man and continue on my own, do my own things and make sure that, nothing gets in the way. And so I put out New World in 2014. And those two albums kind of established me as a prog rock, keyboard oriented, Tony Banks influenced, but into Pink Floyd and Genesis, that kind of a thing, a little bit of Yes. And of course, that's that's my comfort zone, actually, because I grew up as a keyboard player, influenced by Tony Banks and Rick Wakeman and Jeff Downes and everybody. So, but here I had this music that was mostly written on guitar and a bit more singer-songwriter, a bit more like Kevin Gilbert and Thud. And I'm like, all right, at some point I need to get back to that and put that out. But right now I'm kind of on a roll and expanding from this foundation that I built, with this aspect of what I like musically. And then finally, when you build the confidence as well as experience, and you just kind of, I don't know, like practice makes perfect. Like the more you do something and kind of hone the neural pathways for ideas and coming up with lyrics and and awareness, I was able to finally go, all right, I'm going to roll up my sleeves, I'm going to take these songs and I'm going to fix them. I'm going to look at them and objectively, because I had enough space from it to not be married to certain lines and certain things, and go, all right, I think I know what I was trying to say as a 25-year-old. Now, as a 55-year-old, I think I can articulate it better and find the balance between, and this is something that I don't know, maybe it's just my thinking, whether this is the way, I don't know, but my way is you want to find a balance between, in lyrics, what sounds good, what conveys the meaning, and what is poetic, because you can't have all three or just one. I mean, you can have just one. If you're going to have to pick just one, probably Sounds Good is the best. Like there's a lot of lyrics we like from Yes and other bands.
I was just going to say, you could just make shit up like John does. So
yeah. I mean, but because of Kevin, I want it to mean something and I want it to be poetic. So, because it's like he showed me, it's like it's a lyric for a song is an opportunity to roll that all in there, those layers, so that for people who are into lyrics, they go, oh, what a beautiful poetic way to say that.
And it resonates with them because they understand what you're saying, where you're coming from, what you're expressing.
Yeah. And you leave room for interpretation. So not everything is exactly on the nose. And you have to know also when to leave information out if it's just not fitting. You're like, well, I want to tell a story. It's like, well, it's not the same format as, literature. It's a poem kind of a thing. So you have to kind of, but the irony is there were certain things that I wanted to put in there, and you got to be careful not to have it be forced or contrived. But one of the things was she kept the word namaste. She was kind of a California yoga hippie, and she would use this word in an abusive way, kind of like if she was caught maybe like flirting or cheating or something, she would go namaste, like as if that got her off the hook. And I like kind of like, oh, like peace, like, and I'm like trying to make it me the problem, like come on.
Yeah.
So namaste was this word, this condescending word. It isn't a condescending word, but the way she would use it was sort of like namaste, like I'm on a peace vibe here. And like, no, you're not. You're a slime bag.
Total deflection.
Total deflection, exactly. So I was able to put that in a song, and I had given up on it because I had it in another song. And I was like, nah, this sounds forced. I'm like, all right, forget it. And then there was the song Pushed Me Out, where it was like, oh, it works in here because it's actually a bit of a funny song,
Yeah,
and so I,
that's
I
great.
I'm really into it for that.
Cool. Steve, I
Yeah.
know there's comments coming in. Why don't you read those comments and then take it away with questions?
Yeah, so Elaine Franks Taylor says, "Hi there, the car is an amazing concept." And Doug Corinne says, "Hello from Ohio."
Hey
And
guys.
yeah, thanks for tuning in, everyone. And we wanted to touch on influences. There were
Mm-hmm.
a couple places, like I thought I maybe heard a little bit of Beatles and a little bit of Kansas, which I mean, you have Joe Dennison on violin, so there you go. So, were there any influences that you were sort of conscious of while making this album, or did it just so happen to like end up sounding how it sounded, you know?
My process is almost always just writing from feeling first.
Right, yeah.
And so I'll just write something musically, and it just kind of came to me to express a feeling, or to just capture the moment, whatever and so I'm never like, oh, let's do a song like Kansas now, or let's do it.
Right.
It isn't like that, but I am conscious of it. And when it comes out and I hear that it is, like for instance, a song like "Too Far Gone" has a finger picking part, and I actually wasn't able to play that. I need to learn how to do that. But I got Mark McCrite to do it, and a longtime friend of mine. And once he did it, it's sort of Beatlesy in Kansas, very Kansas, like kind of like Dust in the Wind. So, but it
Mm.
wasn't intentionally. It just sort of has that vibe, just because that's a very iconic kind of playing,
Yeah.
and that tempo. But anyway, so I work with Joe on all kinds of stuff anyway. So it wasn't like I'm like, oh, Joe plays with Kansas, let's get him. But it was
Right.
more like this would be really nice with violins. And then once he did it, I'm like, oh, this is kind of a little bit like Kansas. I'm like, but I love Kansas. The first
Yeah.
band I ever saw live was Kansas, actually.
Oh, nice.
Um, yeah, Audiovision's tour.
Cool.
So yeah, so I think it's a balance between just serving the song and the idea of the story of the song and the feeling of the song, and then going, oh, let's have some fun. This is sort of Steely Danish, or this is Pink Floydish. And I'm not the type of person to hide those things. I celebrate those things.
I love that.
And
Yeah.
and I'll even work with people who played with those bands and go, all right,
Yeah.
let's just kind of pay a little homage here. I like to do that a lot, especially because I feel very confident that I bring something to the table. I'm not bringing some second-rate copy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Right.
not gratuitous. It's more
Yeah.
like with love and appreciation, and that really is what everybody does.
Yeah.
When Dark Side of the Moon, which is like one of the best-selling albums of all time, and everything, there's a lot of homage to the Beatles there. You
Yeah.
know, Across
Yeah.
the Universe and Dear Prudence, and if you really listen to it, you go, actually, this is kind of Beatlesy if
Yeah.
you think about it.
The band that really
And
came out with the
yes,
first psychedelic music, if you
yeah,
think
and
about it.
yes, was heavily influenced by Crosby, Stills and Nash and
Yeah.
Young,
Yeah.
and so anyway, but that's what happens. But it's not necessarily always as um, as blatant
Yeah.
or
I was going to say
transparent.
overt.
Right.
Exactly.
It's
Well,
like
I
maybe a
wanted to
little tip
mention,
of the hat, yeah.
right. And I wanted to mention that one of the things I love about the album, Dave, is that you have an assortment of genres, but all these songs absolutely sound like they belong to the same album. And that's a neat, interesting balance. And just like a few songs I want to mention, Eye of the Storm immediately reminded me of very old Pink Floyd, of like from the first three albums, possibly. Genevieve slips into kind of an island feel, followed by a Latin feel with Back to One. And then you've also got Back to One being so reminiscent of Steely Dan with the picking of the electric sitar. But yet it all sounds like it belongs on the same album, which is great.
Thanks. I
Yeah.
mean, there's some couple things about that, but I first of all, I'm very proud of that. It's something that I wasn't sure of 100% until we actually did it. I would give a lot of credit to the musicians I work with,
Mm-hmm.
who help make the glue of it cohesive between my albums. So like Fernando Perdomo and Durga McBroom, for instance, are on all my solo albums. And it kind of helps it sort of have some familiarity because you hear their styles within it as well. But I think, I everything I write is something that I like. And so it represents my taste in music, and it's prog, but it's also classic rock,
Mm-hmm.
and folk rock and different things that I'd listen to. In fact, I would listen to on a road trip. If I had a really long road trip, I'd listen to the entire Steely Dan complete, up to
Catalog.
Gaucho, and
Yeah.
I would listen to, Yes, and Pink Floyd and the Beatles, and so it's I think when you write what you love, it comes off as authentic as
Yeah.
opposed
Yeah.
to
Exactly.
it has a better chance of that than, let's say, if you're like, oh, I'm chasing after this fad, or I'm trying to really be heavy metal when that's not my thing, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's like you have to love it. If you love it and you're passionate about it, then you have that chance for it to really just come off that way. But I put it to the test on this for sure, and I'm very proud that to hear you say that, really, and I've heard other people say that too, and I'm like, whew, like good, because I actually thought part of me was like, am I A, too diverse on this album, and B, is it too different than my other albums where people are going to be like, there's not enough keyboard solos or whatever it is. But but the other thing is this: the songs, there is somewhat of a conscious effort to be diverse and to pay homage in certain ways, because the inspiration for certain songs, like Too Far Gone, the inspiration wasn't Dust in the Wind. It was realized afterwards. I'm like, oh, that's kind of like Dust in the Wind.
Mm-hmm.
Back to One was always like a cross between listening to, um, uh, something off Can't Buy a Thrill, like Do It Again,
Yeah.
and Pat Metheny's Are You Going With Me? And this is the kind of music I listen to on a road trip, especially if I'm sad. You listen to the song "Are You Going With Me?" and
Yeah.
you're just gonna weep if you get it.
Yeah.
And I almost asked Pat Metheny to play on it
Oh.
as well, but I had to kind of dial in my dreams and just kind of like be happy. I got Elliot, and let's just make it about him. And then the electric sitar was another example that was chosen specifically because Fernando plays that.
Mm.
Elliot plays the guitar solo at the end. Denny Diaz, who I don't know. So I'm friends with Elliot. I don't know Denny Diaz, but I love him. He did the original electric sitar solo on Do It Again.
Yeah.
And I was maybe going to ask him through Elliot, or, just anyway. But, a lot of times I'll just ask Fernando to do it. I knew he had an electric sitar. I'm like, hey, you know what? No one ever does this. You rarely hear a distorted electric sitar. Give it a go. Try it. And it came out great. So I was like, all right, well, that kind of tip of the hat
Yeah.
to Dan and Steely Dan.
Absolutely.
That's how I do things.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
and how many volumes do you envision for Heartland Mines? Because this is volume 1 at the moment.
The way I do albums most of the time is I do the album because I have the material and it needs a home, and it needs to come out of me. It needs to be like, all right, I feel responsibility to the song ideas, to be like, this is a good song idea, I want to finish this, or this is a good concept, or this is a good, whatever it is. So I have enough material I could do 5 volumes of that
Oh, wow.
related material.
Wow.
I don't think,
Deep.
I don't know if I necessarily will. I'm definitely doing volume 2 next year. And then what I'll do for volume 3 and beyond, I'm not sure yet. I do know this though. In addition to the original music, I'm doing a road trip covers album or two,
Oh, wow.
a
Nice.
companion. So this is where we'll do anything from Pink Floyd to America to whatever, and Rush and all kinds of stuff. So that will be coming relatively soon as well. So but I have to kind of balance this. I don't want people to. One of the only downsides to doing these things is people kind of want to categorize you, and say, oh, well, and I saw, I mean, most people are very supportive and love this new album. I'm thankful for that. I
Yeah.
saw one person bail on me saying like, this is nothing like Sound of Contact and then Continuum, I'm out. And I'm like, all right, like maybe you'll come back because I'm not
It,
done doing
isn't it
Yeah,
keyboard.
interesting?
just one album and that's it. Like what? Like
And not just that,
Yeah.
but isn't it
Well, especially when
interesting
I
that
do volume 2 and volume
Sure.
3, and some of it gets a little bit folksy or country or this and that for a minute. And, but
well, the
more of that.
expectations that fans put on an artist's artistic, like who is anybody to put artistic boundaries on someone else? That just doesn't make sense, you know.
Yeah, and it's like the other stuff that they really loved is still there, and while the artist is still expressing what they feel they need to express, which
Yeah,
is what
go put
needs to
on
be
Sound
done,
of
it's
Contact
like
for goodness
yeah, like
sakes, right?
Yeah, you could do that. And the other thing is, I mean, I care about a lot of things that you don't necessarily need to care about these days, or that other people don't care about, or whatever. And I'm just me. So I care about, like, for instance, I care about the listeners, I care about the fans.
mm,
Some bands don't care at all, or artists that just like, I'm doing whatever I want. You like
Right.
it or don't like it. And I respect that. I actually respect that. I don't think that's mean or anything. It's very authentic. I care in the sense that, like, I don't want to disappoint them. I don't want to isolate them. I know you
mm,
can't please everybody. I'm not trying to
right.
please everybody. That'll never happen. But I'm kind of like, all right, let me work in some of these other things, but not completely take away what they like. So Worlds Apart, for instance, is a good. It's a song that you might expect me to do sonically.
Yeah,
It's got keyboards. It's rich. It's moody. But then other songs like Dreaming in LA is not a song you might expect me
I
to do.
agree. Yeah, that was a neat
But
surprise. Yeah,
then again, it's kind of like Tom Petty, Kevin Gilbert, and it's something else I like. A little bit sarcastic, funny, storytelling, more talking. So, I think that life, in my opinion, is all about balance. And if you strike a good balance between your old self and your new self, and this
Mm,
side and that side, you can retain most of your fan base and take them along for the ride. Whereas, and I thought like Yes was great at this, at least at the point where they did 90125. We probably talked
mm,
about this before,
yeah.
where it was like, okay, this is very different, but it's really good.
yeah,
And some fans were like, no, I want my Close to the Edge. But,
right.
and I understand that, but like, I still have Close to the Edge, like you said, to listen to. But this album was just fantastic. And, the other albums after that were good too. But like, there was that point where I was like, all right, you know what? And it's been more commercial and they had their biggest hit. Whereas some bands, like let's say even Genesis, who I love Genesis, but they went a little too far, in my opinion, into comedy and pop and this and that, to the where it was like, I mean, still bought all the albums, but I was like, I would skip tracks. Whereas up to Abacab, I never skipped a track on a Genesis record. I
You
even
know
like Who
what?
Done
Can
It.
can I say something about that? As
Please.
a fellow very hardcore Genesis fan, going all the way back to the beginning, I agree, and from this conversation alone, I'm all for musical diversity within the same band, within the same lineup, within the same album. But I really feel that, and even though I accept, like you said, 90125 versus Close to the Edge, just love all that stuff. There's something about what Genesis did, starting with things like That's All. Like, I'm not looking for another Return of the Giant Hogweed or Supper's Ready, but that just went down. You're going down this road. Okay, you might turn here, might turn. That went down some alley I just didn't see coming, that I don't think fits in. And this is just, I'm not telling them this. I'm saying this is from my musical sensibilities and what I like Genesis for. That just doesn't fit in anywhere for me. So I get exactly what you're saying with their catalog. It just kind of,
It's just a little too, like, things like calling your album We Can't Dance. You know, it's funny, yeah, it's cute, but like, this is your album. Like, you used to take albums seriously. Now it's just a joke, or that song I Can't Dance is just a joke.
yeah,
And and I have a sense of humor. Obviously, there's humor in my album, Dirty Girl, and it's hilarious. But it's how, and Coach Kevin was funny, Kevin Gilbert, but and Phil is funny,
Yeah.
but it's just, I don't know, like they just got real gimmicky, and also like frivolous pop, like the song Invisible Touch. I remember when it came out, and I was like, okay, first of all, backtrack. Let's talk about Genesis for a minute. So
Yeah.
When Mama came out, I was like, whoa, dude. Everyone was like, you heard the new Genesis track? This is killer, you know? And then when Invisible Touch came out, the song was the first, and I was like, well, musically, it's not bad. It's kind of like, what is he singing? She sits to have, and I'm like, this is just too much for me. Like, I don't like that. I don't like,
Illegal
like
Alien.
bubblegum pop, and yeah, Illegal Alien and Land of Confusion. I don't like it. I love Genesis and I love them and I support them. I never stop supporting them because I could see past a song choice or this and that. And I understand, I appreciate that a lot of people love that stuff. So, everyone's subjective.
Yeah.
But in terms of, like, let's say, thinking of it as an artist, that's not something I'd want to do. I wouldn't
Right.
want to go so far with my, maybe as a separate project, far removed. I could go real pop just to try something, whatever, but not just change my whole thing to be known for like bubblegum pop.
Right.
Even with the success, because there's no going back
Yeah.
after that to the Supper's Ready and the Hog
Right,
Wing.
right. How would you do that? Yeah. So on the
You wouldn't
topic of
want to.
Genesis, recently your band was on the same bill with a great Genesis tribute band, Genetics. How would you rate their abilities to pay that tribute? And just so you know, you don't have to be nice on this show. Just let it rip.
I'm nice, but I like to be honest, because
Yeah, and that's what
what's
I
the
mean.
point of?
Yeah.
I think they're
Well,
fantastic.
great.
I really enjoyed it. I thought that they're up there with the Musical Box.
Yeah, if someone just offered
For
me tickets for Musical Box in Phoenix on Wednesday and I
they're
just
great too.
can't make it, I'll be in LA. Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, Genetics. They're in Argentina, and so this was their only first couple of shows in the United States, and I think people were blown away.
Yeah.
We didn't get the house filled like the Musical Box has been doing it for decades, and that's understandable, but they deserve it. They really put on a great show, and the guy who does the Gabriel part is just fantastic. He's one of the best that I've
Yeah.
seen. Really gets into it.
That's cool. Steve?
Yeah, and I see that Doug commented, "Hi Dave, get some sleep, man. I'll work and no play." What's the latest on your Lamb Lies Down or Genesis albums? Any idea what he's talking about there? Or
Yeah, I'm doing a tribute album, actually two. One is a
oh right,
Genesis retrospective, which is similar to the one we did for Yes, 50th anniversary of Yes, tribute album yesterday and today. I think that's what it's called. And we're doing one on Genesis, Fernando and I. When I say we worked on the Yes one together. But I have been working on an alternate tribute to the Lamb based off of Nick DiVirgilio's his tribute to the Lamb, where they worked with an orchestra but didn't do keyboards. And I'm like, we should do keyboards and maybe have like Francis Dunnery from It Bites sing it. And so I got Steve Rothery from Marillion to play on it, all sorts of people, Lee Pomeroy, great musicians, and Nick on drums, me on keys.
Oh, Lee's
Um,
great. Yeah.
we did this whole thing with an orchestra as if it was what I would imagine to be a film score to a movie that never happened for the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway.
wow.
So
Yeah.
what's cool to me about it is that it's not like Symphonic Yes, or it's not like a pure symphony. It's, you still hear the rock instruments, and not just the rock instruments, but actually I own Tony Banks' actual Lamb rig.
I remember you
So
telling us that. Yeah.
yeah, I've added that to it. But even before that, I own the same type of instruments,
Oh,
mellotrons,
yeah, you had the
Akamai.
Hammond T before. And now you've added
Well,
was that
that's the only one I don't own.
Oh, okay.
My friend Chris Lordalgi bought it, and I'm the one who convinced him, and I kind of
Oh, yeah.
screwed up, because once I had it in my possession, I was like, okay, this is amazing. It's I have an L102 or a 112, and they're all kind of similar, but this particular T that he had, the Hammond T that Tony had, mojo and weirdness and mods and stuff like that. But I sampled it and I played it on the record, and I have access to it, so it's
Cool.
in my family.
That's great.
Yeah.
Are there other comments, Steve?
I don't see any newer ones, so I guess we'll get back to our questions. You guys played at ProgStock, where Patrick Moraz was also present. Can you tell us about bumping into him there?
Yes, very memorable experience. I was going back to the hotel and where the artists were staying, and I saw him checking in. And we've met before, and but I didn't want to bother him. Like I didn't know. He's such a nice guy though, so I totally could have, but I just nodded. I just went like, hey, and then I was on my way to my room, and he goes, Dave, and he totally fanboyed out on me. It was bizarre. It was like, Dave, oh, I love your music, and he started talking about one of my songs. Like, how did you get that sound at the beginning of the lie? And like, I'm looking around like, is Billy Sherwin here? Did somebody put him up to this? That's like mess with me.
Is Ashton Kutcher gonna come out and say you're punked?
Totally, I felt punked. I was like, all right, this is exactly what we would do as keyboard geeks. Would be like, dude, how'd you get that sound on Sound Chaser with the blah 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 blah? Except I was chill and cool. You know what I mean? And like here he is flipping out, and I'm like, and my bandmates were standing next to me. Of course, Fernando Perdomo is a huge prog head and loves Patrick Moraz too. And he's like, I can't believe this. Like, let me take a picture. And but then on top of that, he was heckling in my show. He's the first one to show up in my show. The first one, just sitting there by himself, waiting for us to play. I'm like, okay, this is so weird. And then he started yelling, unbelievable, in the middle of my show and then I didn't know who it was. And
Play
then,
Sound Chaser.
Oh yeah, I can't. But although I'll tell you something kind of cool. A little yes, I know you guys, Yesshift, love your yes. And so I'm friends with Jeff Downs. Of course, I'm in a band with the other guys from Yes, Jay and Billy and John, Arc of Life.
Yeah.
But I'm also pals with Jeff Downs, who's one of my heroes growing up, just drama in Asia. Yeah. And he invited me to stay with him and his wife, Martine, in Wales. And I went to his studio, and he was learning at the time the parts for Relayer. And apparently, was using Steven Wilson remixes to isolate parts and hear things. And what was so cool was to see him geek out over Patrick Moraz's parts, just like any other fellow musician, like, oh, check out this part. Isn't that cool? Whatever. Yeah. And he's a fan of Patrick Moraz. And I just thought that to me just took Jeff Downs to another level. Whatever anyone says, like, dude, this guy is cool. He's a cool. Yes fan.
Yeah.
Appreciate him because he is just like, he loves it. And, awesome. And he was really into learning the parts and everything. And I thought, like, he's like a big kid like me.
Yeah.
So, just something about Jeff Downs.
That's how we should be as musicians and music fans. But you mentioned Arc of Life, Dave, and at the Alan White tribute, you guys played Whitefish. And I think Steve mentioned that was the first time you guys ever played live, was it?
Yeah. First
what
and
was
only
that
time.
Like? No pressure, right?
Oh, well, actually, those kind of events that are sort of put together, fast, don't usually have rehearsals. Like I played with John Anderson once, and we did long distance runaround at a NAMM show in 2005 with no rehearsal. And we could have bowed out. But I'm like, no, we're playing with John Anderson. Come on.
Yeah.
Like we're just going to do it. It was Nick DiVirgilio, me, Stan Cody. So so for the Whitefish, I was told it was not going to happen. And I had flown all the way there to Seattle. And it's like, you know what? I'm not here for me. I'm here to pay homage to Alan White, the amazing Alan White.
Yeah.
And, and it was an honor to be invited. And then no one told me that we were going to play. So I had gone back to the hotel for a little bit to just get some rest, because like, as Doug said, I lack proper rest. And they called me and said, where are you? We're going to play. I'm like, what are you talking about? And I thought it was off. No, it's on. So the communication wasn't
Wow.
fantastic. So I showed up and literally like, okay, go on stage. I'm like,
Oh wow.
Jesus. So nerve wracking from that standpoint,
Yeah.
but not to play with amongst all those people. It just was an honor. And Fernando got to play with Yes because Steve Howe wasn't
Yeah.
there, played
Oh
Roundabout.
yeah.
And so we were just, totally just honored to be there and to be part of it. As longtime Yes fans and fans of Alan White and his wife was there and everybody just to be able to show our love for the
Yeah.
music and for him, it was priceless. So yeah,
That's
it was a great
awesome.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
We'd love to see Arc of Life tour, and I've enjoyed the progression through the couple of albums that uh, the band has put out. Is there anything new to report regarding Arc of Life activities?
It's now that Jay is also in Yes, so now there's three people in Yes.
Right.
I think their main focus, understandably, is Yes.
Mm.
Um, and especially the last album had more of Billy and John's songs, and things that they would have done maybe with Arc. So Arc is kind of, it was, I didn't start the band. I was added to the band after they already had the songs. And it was born out of John and Billy writing songs that weren't going to be on a Yes record.
Mm.
Right.
So I think, to be honest with you, so unless they feel that they have a surplus of material, and again, I think they work maybe the same way as I do in the sense that, hey, we've got this material, it needs a home. And I like that because then you're like, you have the goods, you have the songs. You're like, all right, song. We're going, hey, let's get. I tried to put together a super group once with me, Steve Hackett, and Ray Wilson, and maybe Nick DiVirgilio, and maybe Billy Sherwood, and they had all said yes, actually. But
Wow.
they're all busy,
Yeah.
and I would have had to do most of the work getting it all together, which is fine, but it's a bit sort of like investing in, well, I could just do it and then get them to organize the whole thing. It could even still potentially happen, but it's a little
Did you
out
have a
of
name for
reach.
it, Dave?
No, I didn't even get to that point. I just,
That's
we
too
talked
long.
about it.
Oh, never mind.
All the names. um, yeah, I mean, uh, everyone was up for it, and I think like probably if I did it, it could be an album, but getting everybody to
Mm.
tour, there would just have to be big money behind the whole thing,
Yeah.
and it's like, and same thing with Arc of Life. Those guys are used to touring with Yes, and Billy's really the only one who's just will play anywhere. He'll play anywhere. Like, and he doesn't care about roughing it. He's really like a kid trooper, a starship trooper,
That's
Yeah.
who
cool.
will just go play a club, whereas the
Yeah.
other guys are like, no, I want to play a real venue. I'm X years old and I'm not going to sit there and get in a van with a bunch of guys and play a club anymore.
Yeah.
And I understand that. I don't necessarily want to either, but I'm willing to because it's all about the music for me and Billy too. So I think, you know, I have another album that could have been like an Arc album of music that I wrote with Fernando, who's not an Arc of Life, but also kind of Yes adjacent.
Right.
So we're going to work on that album. John Davison is co-written a track on it. He might sing on it, but Billy's definitely on it. And Billy's co-written stuff on it. So whether that's becomes the next Arc album or something like Arc, but another side project, probably a little bit more studio project than a live thing like
Mm-hmm.
Arc. Yeah, something like that.
Well,
It's
speak.
hard to say. But if Billy was to come around and say, you know what, we're doing an Arc record because he's kind of the leader of that band. He is the leader of that band. Then I'd be all for it. But it's just not my call.
Yeah.
Mm.
You. We heard that there's word you're going to be doing Cruise to the Edge again in 2024. Before you tell us anything about that, it reminds me that last time you were on, you were getting ready to do Cruise to the Edge, and you got Billy. You were, if I
No, I think
remember
that
the
was
story right.
after he'd already done Cruise
Was
to the
it?
Edge that year. Yeah.
Well, I remember you were recruiting Billy for something that you were going to basically have the opportunity to bust his britches on a little bit rather than the other way around. Did that happen?
Yeah.
Great.
And it's happening again.
Good. So tell us about Cruise to the Edge 2024.
Well, first of all, Cruise to the Edge, thankfully, is still happening. It's the best thing ever. I love it. People love it. It's just a great time.
Great.
And this is my fifth or sixth one
Oh, wow.
in a row, thankfully.
Wow.
I'm so glad that I'm so grateful that they've invited me back. And we have Billy with us. I will still have Matt Dorsey as well. So I have two bass players, kind of like Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
Not at the same time, but and we'll play different material. But there is a sort of Arc Yes related surprise, I will say.
Okay, nice.
Okay.
Nice.
Nice.
That's all I can say.
We had David Cross on yesterday from King Crimson talking about his new album and showed a couple clips from the previous Cruise to the Edge experience, which was great. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I mean, Cruise to the Edge is great because you have all the people there in a more sort of intimate setting. So, you might be in a whirlpool with Steve Hackett or at the casino with, back when Yes was on, like with Jeff Downs and Alan White. We went to, I remember one time I was hanging out at the casino bar, which is not really where I normally hang out, but somehow I was wise to go there, hanging out with Jeff Downs, Alan White, and Alan Holsworth. Just the three of us, and their wives. And so Cruise to the Edge is like that. You can catch a lot of different bands. And because everybody's on the same boat, all these musicians, a lot of times there's some cross collab, guest spots on stage. I've had Steve Hackett join us on stage. I've had Jeff Downs play keyboards on one of my songs. That was a thrill for me while I play guitar. It's a song that I called Into the Sun, where I normally play both instruments but can't live. And, Michael Sadler from Saga sits in with us often when he's there. So I'm sure it's going to be fantastic again, with some new surprises.
Awesome.
We did, speaking of King Crimson, one time after we did our set, we did an abridged version of the entire In the Court of the Crimson King album.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
To pay tribute to Greg Lake, who had just died at the time. And that was just, and you know what's trippy about that?
What's that?
I was looking out into the audience, seeing members of King Crimson, like Pat Mastelotto and Tony Levin watching us. And I'm like,
what are they thinking?
You're talking about nerves, and guts. But somehow we just, the passion that we have for that music just, is stronger than any of that, and doing it so many times, it's like, we'll do this. We'll own this. And I don't care who's watching. I don't care if Robert Fripp's watching. Well, maybe Robert Fripp might be a little nervous.
But do you have stuff like that recorded, Dave, that you might release even on like an official bootleg or anything? I mean, that sounds like there's an amazing kind of tucked away catalog of live music from these different experiences that maybe you could do a whole anthology of on its own.
I record as many shows as possible. Sometimes the recordings don't work, which is a real tragedy. And sometimes the shows just aren't recorded because they don't do it. Like Cruise to the Edge, they don't record the shows. They should. I wish they did. So there's been some good ones. So we only have audience recordings, and those are true bootlegs. I think I'm going to do maybe I have enough material to do a really interesting, semi-interesting documentary of some of these, have the footage. So I could kind of tell the story in a visual way, especially for my Vimeo channel, because I'm starting something. It's vimeo.com/Dave Kerzner. They have a pay-per-view program. And it's kind of like, the poor man's Netflix or something, in the sense that, and we all watch Apple TV or Netflix and, there's things. And it's like, okay, I'm going to watch. In fact, I watched a great one, by the way, on hypnosis, the album making artwork company.
Yeah.
And it's,
I saw that. That was great. Yeah.
Storm Thurgeson and the other guy.
Yeah.
And, so I was like, all right, so those kind of shows are cool. And I have live concerts, audio visual albums, like the new album with music videos for the whole album, and other content then I'm like, all right, I can't just, it costs a lot of money to do these. I can't just put them on YouTube for free or whatever. But through Vimeo, you can rent them, I think, or buy them and have it
Yeah.
forever. And so I'm going to do a documentary where we really show a significant amount of those special moments that we captured on video, just so you can, if you're interested in that sort of thing, experience it a little bit more like than just imagining it. You're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
there he is doing it. Like, wow. And
That's
also
cool.
like, what a great solo or whatever, so
All
those
from
highlights.
Cruise to the Edge experiences.
Yeah,
So
Cruise to the Edge
call it-
highlights.
So call it Life Preserver.
Very funny. Squids to the Edge or Curse to the Edge.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. And we also saw, as these promos for this interview were being shared around, we saw that you commented that you might do a live tap dance during this show. Now, I don't know if you want to do that, but we also heard, like, back in 97, I think it was, John Anderson said Billy Sherwood could do a mean tap dance. So between you two, who do you think would win in a tap dancing contest?
Billy, because I was just kidding.
Oh, really?
I can't tap dance to save my life.
Okay.
Even in the regular 4/4, let alone 9/8. So I was just trying. It was a desperate attempt to try to get people to come join us.
Do it to the apocalypse section of Supper's Ready.
Yeah. Tap, 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 tap.
Exactly. And Steve dropped in your Vimeo channel in the comments. And before we go, here's a question from Doug Caron, who's asking, any word on Arc of Life 3?
Well, I sort of just answered that in the sense that it's up to Billy.
Yeah.
But again, I'm just honest and realistic about stuff. They're so busy writing and touring with Yes that it's not Billy's priority, and that's understandable, and I'm okay with that. That said, we are going to do something on Cruise to the Edge that's related to Arc and Yes.
Great.
And I am still really doing an Arc 3 album anyway with Billy and John and Fernando, but it's just probably not going to be called Arc because Jimmy Hahn and Jay aren't on it. Mm-hmm. So, but maybe they will be. You know how those things are, like 90125 was Cinema, and then they got John Anderson, and and I think the most important thing to me is the music. What you call it is secondary, all those things.
Right.
It's kind of like, well, and I didn't write any of the songs on the 2 Arc of Life records. I'm just the keyboard player. I didn't produce it. I didn't engineer it. I didn't do most of the things I'm actually good at. Keyboards I'm good at, but there's a lot of keyboard players you could get to play, but not necessarily songwriters to write exactly the way I would write or whatever I bring to the table in those arenas. So there was talk of us all writing together. There was maybe talk, well, there wasn't really talk, but in my mind, there was like the idea of, well, what if we all just kind of contribute songs and I kind of get in there, which I wasn't pushing for, but would be totally into. And then there's just like, you know what? It's what I said to you guys last time about how the tables can turn in a different context, and I'm the boss.
Yeah.
And I hire Billy, and he's totally cool. He'll do whatever you want. You could hire Billy. Like when he's available, he's a team player.
Yeah.
And so, if I wanted to write songs in that style, let's say between Yes and Arc in that area, I could still do it, and he'll play on it, and and I'll pay for it. So that's happening. So that's the only thing I have any control over. But again, he could tomorrow. At the moment, we're not working on Arc of Life 3.
Cool.
It could change at any moment.
Yeah, thanks for elaborating on that. And thanks for taking time to join us again. You're always welcome to come on and promote whatever you've got going on, or just talk about music or talk about other people if you want. So we really appreciate you joining us.
Even though it's live. I always feel like I'm going to get myself into trouble. Just with one word away from being in trouble.
That's funny. Steve, tell everybody where they can find us.
Yeah, they can find us at facebook.com/Yesshift, youtube.com/@Yesshift. anchor.fm/yesshift. And you can also write to us at yesshiftpodcast@gmail.com, feedback, suggestions, and yeah, it's pretty much everything. Yeah.
Yeah, get this new great album from Dave Kerzner. The link is in the description of the post.
Yeah,
It's
sonicelements.bandcamp.com.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And again, thanks, Dave. Hang on the line with us for a moment after we say goodbye to the audience. And folks, thanks for joining Stephen and I. We've got a couple other things lined up as we close out the year, not only on Yesshift, but on Drum Talk TV for those of you watching on the simulcast. And yet another new way that we're going to wind down the year on Drum Talk TV. I got to tell you, we were kind of stuck. I was kind of stuck on ideas, but we came up with something, and that'll debut starting probably next week. And we'll see you all soon. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Bye.
Bye.